Hello and welcome to the part number 32 of the Node Editor tutorial series. My name is Pavel Kropala from BlenderFreak.com, and in this part today we are going to finish the file menu and refactor the open, save, save as and even the new functions we were using before. We are going to fix up our old example so it does work also. And look at that, if we open multiple files, now we can open multiple of them. Even with the invalid ones, we will get an error loading exception which we handle, so our application will be still running and won't crash. And as you can see, we already had this file opened, so there is no need to create a new window for that. If I close everything, you can have a look. We got disabled options in the menu because they don't make sense right now to use save, save as, and also it's working in the window. So I hope you are excited, and let's start coding. Let's have a look at the Node Editor, our previous example. Let's try play and open a file. If I open the second example we were using, it works, but there is not showing the name of the file. This card is working. Let's start again, and we got crash. Interesting. So I guess that could be bug in somewhere in the node deserialization. So let's go ahead and try here in this file, nodes node. We are going to import from node editor.utils a dump exception. Let's go ahead to the deserialization and put everything into the try catch or try except block. Except exception SE dump exception E. Okay. Open up the second graph. This is running. Discard, still running. Let's try to open that again. This one is running, but the first one should not be running and should end up with an exception and a crash. And it definitely will, because if we have a look at our example, here is our graph 2. And here is our first graph. Then you can easily see these are the sockets. But in our second example, we're already using multi-edges true, which is currently not present at all in our first one. So therefore, we will go to the deserialization here, which is here, and this is the exception. We were trying to get information in our, let me close a few tabs here, node socket deserialize, self is multiple edges, and we are accessing data to the value multi-edges, and that information is not present here right now. So therefore, we will change this to a new function. We will call that self.determine multi-edges, and we are going to pass data here. And let's create a new function, define self and data. And we can ask if multi-edges is in data, then return data multi-edges. Otherwise, here we can write a comment, probably older version of file, make right socket multi-edged by default. Or you can throw up some kind of an exception like obsolete format or something, and you can, in the upper logic somewhere, you can try to catch this exception of the older version file system or file used, and you can try to run some code which will upgrade the version of the file, etc, etc. But in our case, we are going to return data position in right bottom or right top. So let's try it again. If I do file open, and I go to examples, test, and try to load out the first one. Now you can see we fixed our bug. our console is clear and no crash. Awesome. But there was also some crash during the... Nope, this one is still working. So maybe we will find that bug a bit later. Also, I found out that when we are opening this graph.json txt file, you can see we got nothing here on the right side because it's just txt file. So if I go ahead and rename this file to be just .json and I do the refactoring for this items, then it turned to a JSON file. It's being detected here, and we can go through all of these properties in this structure here, and we can see much better what's going on. So I'm going to do that same thing for the second file, rename that to JSON, refactor. Let's check out the node graphic view because something changed here. Here is a bunch of our code. Here are the changes with the blue line, and it's in commented code right now, and it actually did fix correctly what we had going on there. Okay, so we can close that for now. So now we can switch to the calculator example, and to be able to open files, we do need to go to node editor window, and we will override this function again in our calculator window. Let's find where we do have the onFileNew. That's here. We won't need to have maybe save because there will be multiple tabs opened, and we do want to definitely ask for the file names. So fnames is gonna be get open file names. And then basically we can go through each fname in fnames, and if the fname is not empty, then we will try to find the open subwindow. Existing is gonna be self.find MDI child, pass the file name, and if it's existing, so it will not return none, then we can basically say self.mdi area set active subwindow and pass in the existing found subwindow instance. Otherwise, we need to create new subwindow and open the file. So therefore, we are going to say subvnd equals to basically the same thing we were doing in here. So let's go ahead and copy these lines. Node editor, create calculator subwindow, and subwindow add subwindow, and then we can try the file load method, which is, I guess we get implemented that here. No, we have not. We got it implemented, I believe. Oh, it's in the window still. No, it's not. It's node editor widget scene load from file. Okay, that means for us we wanna be calling something like node editor dot file load and pass in the file name. So that's gonna be the fname. And what we can do also is we could detect if the file loading was done correctly. Then we can say self.statusbar, for example, show message, and say file load it and pass in the fname and show that up for 5 seconds. Then we can say subwindow dot set title, but I believe we do need to say node editor here, and then we can say, then we can add the subwindow. Otherwise there is no reason to add the subwindow if we didn't manage to load up the file itself. So let's move that here, and we can say subwindow show. And if we fail to load up the file itself, we can basically say node editor.close. And therefore we can destroy this widget completely. But I guess, yep, we wanna use this for the loading. So let's create first the file load method in the node editor. So node editor widget, let's go ahead somewhere here and define new function, and the function is going to be called file load, and it's taking file name, and that should do return self.scene.load from file. Let's check it out. Yes, we do have it here, but it's not returning true nor false. So we will fix that later. And for now, because we wrote a bunch of code which maybe will not be working at all, let's go ahead and put up try. The whole block will end up in except exception as E, and if something is going to be messed up, we are going to dump the exception. So let's try that. File open, and now we are asking for multiple files. That's right. Let's go ahead to the test and test out our graph, and it failed obviously because we don't have function find MDI child. So I'm going to stop that. Let's go to the MDI example because there were these functions and we are going to use them. So here is find MDI child. Copy that one, go to the calculator window. Let's go to the end. Here is create MDI child. So let's paste it here, find MDI child. This is asking for the file name. We got that already solved. And we will go through sub window list for each window. We will go to the node editor widget and ask for the current file. And we are going to test if it's equal to file name. And if it is, we are going to return window, and otherwise we are returning none. So let's try it again. Open example and try to open the graph. Yes, we did open the graph, but we didn't return true nor false. Let's try to open something completely different. If we open a file which is not our JSON file, we will crash with JSON decode error expecting value something. So we can make sure if we were able to read the format or not. But first, let's go to the node editor widget and to our file load function, which is gonna be here. We can reuse what we saw in the example, in the MDI example, and I believe it was something like set override cursor. So in the file load, here it is, set override cursor, which set up the cursor to the waiting cursor, and then we could restore that back again. So I will copy these two lines, go to the node editor widget to file load, and I will use it this way. But first of all, I'm going to override the cursor. Then we will create a try block, and we will try to load up the file. So if we were successful with loading the file, then we obviously can say self.filename equals to filename, and we should probably finish our try except, so except invalid file as E, then we are going to print E, and in this case we will restore override cursor, and show up the message box warning in self error loading os.path.basename file name, and we can print out the exception and we can return false. If we were successful here, we can probably clear history, etc., and then we can return true. But yeah, let's do that here, and in a minute we will create a new exception called invalid file if some JSON decoding error will occur. Maybe we can do finally queue application like this, and here we can return false. If something else happened, we will just return false. Okay, and load from file. We will extend this one, and let's create the new invalid file exception. Let's move it up here and define a class invalid file. It's gonna extend exception, and we can say pass. This way we can define our custom exceptions which we will use. And in the load from file we can go ahead and we will do file read. That should be okay. Then we are going to do try, because here we are already loading the JS or the JSON. This is gonna be here also, and self has been modified. It's gonna be false if we successfully manage to read the file. Otherwise we will accept JSON.JSON decode error, and if we have this issue we will raise invalid file and write out is not a valid JSON file, and we will pass the file name os path base name file name. So this way we are going to detect if there was some JSON decoding error. Otherwise we can accept any other exception as E, and if that happens we can dump exception E. So we don't know OS and we don't know dump exception. So let's go above and from node editor.utils import dump exception, and we are going to import OS. And now this should be okay, I believe. Load from file, we got everything we need. Let's try play. I will choose file open and select 3 of the Python files, and we got another exception. So invalid file is not known here. So from the node scene we are going to import scene and invalid file. Let's try that again. Calculator subwindow.py is not a valid JSON file. So let's test out if we can load multiple files. That's correct. Let's go ahead to our example test and try to choose these 2 files, and as you can see here is our second file graph.json, and this is the first one, and we successfully read these files. Awesome. The same way as we created the file load, we can create a FileSafe method. So define FileSafe, and we can pass file name, which can be none by default, because when we already know the file name we don't need to force it to be something else. When called with empty parameter we won't store the file name. Therefore if file name is not none, self.filename is gonna equal to file name. Then we can copy this set override cursor, paste it here. Then we are going to restore it once we do self scene.saved file with self.filename. Okay, and if everything is okay we are going to return true, as we did here in the file load function. And here we got a notification that this code is unreachable, but I will keep it here for now. It should be returning true or false in this handling of the exception itself. So let's go ahead to the calculator window, as we have the file open, on file open and on file new, and let's write or override the on file save and on file save as functions. Let's start with the file save, I guess. We can ask for the current node editor. It's gonna be self.active MDI child, and if it's not empty, then we can ask for the file name. So again, fname and filter as we did previously, q file dialog, get save file name and save graph file, and if the fname is equal to empty string, then we are going to return false. Otherwise, we can say current node editor dot file save and pass in the file name, and then we can say current node editor set title, because obviously we set up a new name. We want to see that in the title of the window or the sub window, and we can again status bar show message something like successfully saved as fname for 5 seconds, and we can return true. So the file save will be pretty much the same thing. We will do these two lines again, and if not current node editor is file name set, I believe that's the name of the function. No, it's not. So let's have a look. So title node editor widget is file name set. That's here. And the active MDI child, we are returning node editor widget. Okay, so this one should be up and running correctly. So we were here. And let's continue. If the file name is not set, then we obviously want to return self.on file save as. Otherwise, we should be able to save. So current node editor dot file save, and we will skip the parameter here. So we don't pass argument, keep the file name, and we can again say self.status bar something like show message, and we can show successfully saved and pass in the fname. So that's the current node editor dot file name for 5 seconds, and we can return true. Let's test this one out, and if I'm going to go up to the test, let's try graph 2, and let's try save as, and do that as a graph 3.json. Successfully saved, no crash, we are still up and running, and here is our graph 3 and graph 2, and these two should be the same. So let's test it quickly. I will just minimize this one and do Ctrl Tab to have a look if something changed or not. And I will do page down, and let's test it out. Ctrl Tab, everything seems to be the same, and the edges are exactly the same thing also, which is awesome. It looks like we are actually saving everything correctly. Let's delete it. Okay, and here's the graph 2. Again, it changed the title to the graph 3. Once I move with something, we got a star. That's awesome. Let's open the graph 2, and let's try to save it. and let's check it out. This one is unmodified. There is no change in the file. Let's try to save it again. Yeah, it got written to the correct file, which is awesome. Let's try save here, graph 3, and our graph 3 is here again. So we managed successfully to create the open, save and save as functions for our calculator window. And let's have a brief recap of what we have done so far. Basically, in the node editor window, in the file open, save and save as functions, we were previously, when we were trying to save the scene, we were going to self.getCurrentNodeEditorWidget and .scene and load from file. And one of the reasons we moved the logic to the widget itself is so we don't have to access the scene directly. So if we have a look, for example, to the save, we are already doing self.scene save file, overriding cursor and setting up the file name, which is nice. But this code will not be working as it was before, because we already don't have self.filename in the node editor window. We moved it directly to the widget. So for this to be working again, we do need to fix that and ask for the file name in the node editor widget. And the same thing will go basically, I guess here. No, that's done. Self.filename here on file new. We want to reset the file name. The save or the open is open file. If it's set, okay, this one is. Set the file name for the current widget. This should be working also. Here, this one is correct, I believe, on FileSafe as, and again we are setting the file name. So let's try to find self.filename, and this is here also, so we missed a few places. We need to do that again, and let's try to find that, and that's everything of the self.filename in this file. So basically now it should be working again. So let's try the node editor. Let's try to open examples, example test, graph 2. Let's press Ctrl S, saving. This one was saved. Let's check it out. And I don't see any differences here in the JSON file, so this one should be okay and running. So let's close that. Let's have a closer look on the code in the node editor widget. So the FileSafe, it sets up the file name if it's not empty, and it saves to the file. So our save to the file is here. And instead of calling this one, we could go ahead and call FileSafe and set up the name. And this one should be already set. So let's try to do it this way. Let's run the application, open file, example, test, graph 2. And I'm going to save that, successfully saved, and no change. Just to test it out, I'm going to move this node almost on the same level. I'm going to close it up, and the graph to JSON changed. We changed the position here. So let's go ahead and do revert. So this change works. So on the FileSafe as, which is here, we are asking for the file name, we are setting up the file name, and we are doing the FileSafe. So basically we can avoid these two lines here, and we can call self.getCurrentNodeEditorWidget and say FileSafe with the new file name fname. So let's try that. Let's try save as. I will go to the examples and write graph3 JSON, saving. This one writes it was saved, but not in the status bar. So let's copy this, paste it here, saved as, like this, and let's have a look. This is FileSafe. This one works. Nice. And what about the open? We are checking if maybe save, because we don't want to lose our data which we currently can have in the single graph we have opened. And if this is done, then we are going to load from file and setting up the file name and setting the title. So if this file name exists, we should be able to call just self.getCurrentNodeWidget file load and pass in the file name as here. So in our case, fname. Let's try to run that. So I will try to load up a file which is not correct. For example, this one, and we got error loading. That's correct. So we can clean up all of this code here. So let's test out again the calculator. File, open. We got an error, that's correct. And when we open example test and try open this one, it's successfully loaded. If we try to save that as graph 4, it has been saved. Let's have a look. We got a file, awesome. And when I move that and do Ctrl S, we got graph 4 has been saved, which is perfect. We are going to the calculator window and let's have a look on the file open. As you can see, somewhere here we are calling nodeEditor.setTitle. Also we are doing that for the FileSafe as. So probably we should do that even here. So let's move that here. Current nodeEditor.selfTitle. Let's press play. Open up again the file. Graph 2. Move that a little bit. Save that as graph3.json. Star disappeared. Move that again. And Ctrl S and the star did vanished, which is awesome. So the next thing I would like to see is when the node editor is empty and no file or no graph is being opened. When I go to the file menu, the save and save as doesn't make sense to be enabled. So let's go ahead and try to disable them. So for the updating of the menus, we are going to the calculator window, and we should have some function called update menus, which is currently empty. So here we can basically ask for the active MDI child, which is going to be self.activeMDIChild, and we can ask if there actually is one, so has MDI child, and that's going to be condition active is not none, and self action save set enabled, and it's going to be enabled only if has MDI child. And the same thing will go for the save as action, and the same should go for also for the window, for the close, close all, tile, cascade, and etc. But I believe it was here in the MDI example. So let's have a look. It was not in the child, in the main window, and there should be something like update menus, which is here. It is, which is awesome. I'm gonna skip the paste for now, and we will go and copy this close action up to the separator. Okay. Go back to the calculator window, copy that one, and I do need to rename all of these. And let's print out when we are updating menus. And it's not running because we don't have action close, which is here. Yes, if we have a look, create actions, here is close ACT, that's not correct. So let's rename all of this also. Okay, close act doesn't exist, which is here, because we need to rename this one also. Here we go, action, and will it be running? Not yet, so just rename. Run about action doesn't exist. Again, rename. And now when we press play, I got file, the save and save as are disabled. The window is working. Update menu was there. If I do file new, update menu was called, as you can see. So the file got now save, save as and open. And even the window is enabled right now. So let's try to open example test. Let's choose all of these 4. And we got one error loading. This one is correct. This one works. The window is showing new graph 2 and 3. This is perfect. Let's move that. Here is a star, here is a star also. The file works. If I close everything, it's disabled again. So all of this is functioning right now, which is perfect. So that's gonna be everything for this part. Thank you for watching and see you at the next part.